Hello everyone, I'm so happy you're joining me today. Welcome. In this video, I'm going to be playing with a new collection from Spellbinders, and this is a really beautiful collection called Yana's Blooms. It was designed by Yana Smokola, and I have a few of the items from this collection that I'm going to be creating a bunch of cards with. If you love creating cards with florals, then this is definitely a set that you'll want to check out. Now, this first item here is called Magnolia Blooms. This cuts out the most beautiful, intricate set of flowers, and it also has a background die to cut it out. It's a really good size. It pretty much fills up an A2 sized panel, and you can use it either landscape or portrait orientation. Now, the next one is very similar, but it's a little bit smaller, and this one is actually a glimmer plate. This one is called Magnolia Glimmer Blooms. Look at all of the intricate detail in this plate. It also has the outline die so you can cut it out. This one is just a touch smaller, but it still fills out an A2 size panel very nicely, as you can see. So we are going to be doing a lot of hot foiling in this video with the Spellbinders Glimmer Hot Foil system. Now this one I'm really excited about too. I love diagonal stripes. This is another glimmer plate, and it's just called Diagonal Glimmer Stripes. It fills up completely your A2 sized panel, as you can see there. It goes edge to edge. And I love striped stamps and background stamps and stencils, and now I have the glimmer plate. So I was really excited for this one. And then the last set I'm using is called Foliage. This has the most beautiful hexagon plate included. So the middle plate is the glimmer, and then it cuts out around it as well as inside it if you want. You have many options here. All of the foliage pieces come with outline dies as well. So there's the plate, and then it cuts out an outline for it. What's fun about this set as well is it has these two plates right here. With these two pieces, you can create marbling on your hexagon. So very clever and well thought out little set. So let's get into the card crafting. And again, I'm going to be making up a bunch of designs using all of these beautiful products. And as always, I'll have all of the links to these products listed in the description box below. So for the first card, I'm going to create a set of cards using the Magnolia Blooms die. This is what it looks like when you die cut it. This would be fun to do die cut inlay. However, for this card, I'm going to do it kind of simple because I want to make a whole set of note cards using this gorgeous die. So I'm going to be gluing two of these together just to add a little bit of dimension, a little more structure to this piece. I cut these out with 110-pound cardstock, and then I'm going to add little dabs of glue behind it, and then I'm going to even dab it off so that I don't get glue oozing out from between the dies. The board I'm working on is a chip board, and it came off one of my pads of watercolor paper. I like to keep those, and I can use them to protect my work mat. I can even ink blend on them, as I'm going to do next. So we're going to be doing some simple ink blending on these floral pieces. I'll start with the greenery. I'm using a finger dauber and some twisted citron to go over the leaves. I love how the leaves are solid like this. It just adds an interesting touch to this die. And I'm not worried about getting green on the floral part of this die cut. Next, I'm coming in with Rustic Wilderness just to add a little bit of shading onto these leaves. And then I'm going to use some peacock feathers for the blooms. I'm using a small blending brush for this. I'm going to make a whole set of these using different color combinations. For the centers of these magnolia blooms, I'm going to use some purple, just right in the center. This is Wilted Violet. So my die cut piece is done, and I'm going to mat it onto a piece of white cardstock so that it really shows the colors. It's so pretty. I used the fluted die set from Spellbinders to cut out 2 panels. This is what the set looks like. I use this a lot. I love the rectangle sets from Spellbinders. So I popped it up with some foam dots, and I'll attach the white cardstock to the Blue Lagoon cardstock. Or maybe, no, that's teal topaz, sorry. It's a little bit of a lighter teal. And then I want to add just a touch of color behind the blooms, the magnolia blooms. So I'm pulling in some more of the peacock feathers. I'm just trying to put a dab of color where the blooms are. Just a little circle of color. I'm not worried about getting a perfect blend, but it looks really pretty from behind these die cuts. I'll add 2 more of these little dabs of color. And these are really some fast and easy cards. And like I said, I created a whole set using these dies. So let's add some glue behind this. I'll take it off screen and dab it off. Then I can just attach it to the white cardstock panel. I'm not going to be adding any sentiments to this set of cards, but I am going to add a few gemstones. And then I'm going to give these out as a gift. I have a set of 3. I thought I'd include a set of die-cut sentiments and let the recipient put whatever sentiment they want on these cards. A panel of pre-printed sentiments would be another idea to include with this card set. Those are so popular now, and then you just cut them apart. I'll attach this to a top folding white card base. And then I'll pull out the other 2 cards that I had already created. Here's a close-up look at the first one. I love these teal and greens together. For the second card, I used some oranges and greens together. And of course, more of the gemstones. And then I had to do a pink one. I love how the pink one turned out. And some really soft greens for the leaves. So that set is ready to give out as a gift. So I pulled out my Glimmer hot foil machine for the next card, and I'm going to be using these 2 sets, the diagonal glimmer stripes as well as the magnolia glimmer. And I have some really beautiful foils. I'll start with the diagonal stripes, and I have some really beautiful teal foil that I'm going to cut down to size for this. I'll cut this down to size using my quick trimmer. And I use my scissors as well. I kind of go back and forth between the 2. The paper that I'm using for all of my glimmer hot foiling today is hammer meal, and it's a very smooth, almost a glossy cardstock. I'm going to hinge this plate onto the piece of cardstock, and I can just lift up the plate and put the pretty side of the paper so it's facing the pretty side of the plate. And then I'll use another piece of the yellow tape at the bottom of this, and this will help it so it doesn't shift when I run it through my die cutting machine. I push the timer button on the machine, and once the light turns solid, I can run it through my die cutting machine. And I go very slowly. I usually run it through twice. I'll back it out. On a recent video from Jennifer McGuire, I saw her embossing with these glimmer plates, and I'm going to have to give that a try because it was amazing. Such beautiful results. So you can also emboss with these glimmer plates if you have the right sandwich. So let's take off the plate. I'll put my silicone mat here to protect my work surface. Then I'll peel up the tape, and I reuse the tape several times. While I have this plate out, I am going to foil several panels with it, with other colors. But I do that off camera. But it's nice to have these on hand. I'm always using diagonal stripes on my cards. And here is the result of that. Isn't that just beautiful? This would look pretty on colored cardstock as well. And now for the magnolia bloom, I'm using some Aura foil. And the hinge method, once again, just to keep it in place, I'll put that face down on the machine. and then press the timer button. It takes about a minute for it to stop flashing, and then again I'll run it through my die cut machine. And just check out how gorgeous this turned out. It's just lovely. I'm going to use the coordinating die to cut this out, and I'm being careful not to put the tape over the foil. I don't want that to be pulled up. So I'm just putting the tape on the metal die. And here it is, all cut out. Let's cut out the teal diagonal stripe panel with a rectangle die. Or you could use your paper trimmer. This panel is going to go behind the Magnolias. But I wanted to add a little more color, so I'm bringing in some salvage patina and adding it to the bottom corner. And then I'll flip it over and do the opposite corner. This is a piece of teal topaz cardstock that I'm going to mat it with. Matched perfectly with the hot foil. So I'm just going to glue this down flat with some dot liner. It has just a very thin sliver of a matting around it, but just enough to be able to see it. So before we attach this to the card, let's pull out some Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. I haven't used these for a while, so I thought I would try them on this hammer mill paper. I'm using some flicking motions just to add a little bit of color at the bottom of each petal. This is Carmine, and the other one is Sugared Almond. On this paper, they do not blend at all. So that's why I'm doing the flicking motion. It looks pretty too, it adds texture to it. But if you try to pull these out with a water brush, it will not budge at all, very much. Maybe just a tad, but you don't get a smooth blend on this paper. But I'm starting with the darker color first, and then going over it with the lighter pink. Isn't that beautiful? I really love that texture, and it's a very fast way to color. I'll pop this up with some foam adhesive. And then I'm using one of the dies from the card kit of the month for February. This just says hello, which I cut out with a piece of white cardstock and attached to a piece of black cardstock to make it pop. So let's pop this up on the front of the card. And then the hello sentiment is popped up as well with some foam strips. And I wasn't sure where to put this, at the top or the bottom. It looks good really anywhere. But I settled for putting it at the bottom of the card. This was a really fast card to put together, and it turned out just stunning. While I had my machine out, I went ahead and foiled a bunch of the Magnolias as well as the diagonal stripes to have on hand. Oh, and there's my son. He wanted to say hi to everybody. And now here is a close-up look at the finished card. I added a few aquamarine gems around this panel. Now it's time to create a card using the Geo Foliage set, and I'm using some brass gold foil for this one. This time I'm just going to cut it down with my scissors. I'm not going to hinge this onto the paper this time. I'm just going to plop it right down onto the glimmer machine and add my foil and my cardstock and then the plates and go from there. I have all of my other glimmer plates ready to go, and I'm using lots of different foils this time. So let's gingerly pick up the cardstock, and I'll put the plate over on the silicone mat to cool. And then here is the big reveal. Isn't that beautiful? I'm not going to even bother erasing the foil around it, the overfoiling, because I'm going to die cut this out. I'm going to try out these beautiful marbling glimmer plates, however. So again, I'm just going to set it on the glimmer hot foil machine and place the marbling plates on the inside, more of the gold brass foil, and then the cardstock. Okay, here it is, ready for the big reveal. I love this little magnet tool that you can pick up these hot plates with and put them on your silicone mat. Okay, let's pull off the foil. And this did overfoil just a little bit, but isn't that pretty? And then you can go back and add more marbling to this piece if you want to. So here is the panel of, or one of the panels of foliage. I did that with some silver. I also foiled some flowers and the berries with some pink and purple foil. I'll use the coordinating dies on all of these pieces, and I did end up foiling more than I needed, but that ended up being a good thing because I added some of these pieces on the inside of my card. I'll tape these in place and then cut them out. I cut out one of my diagonal foil panels with the hexagon die. And there's the foiled piece. I cut that out too. I'm not going to use it for this card, but I am going to keep that for another card. And then I made two of the frames, the hexagon frames. I wanted to add a little bit of color to my striped hexagon. So I'm using some chipped sapphire as well as some peacock feathers. My brush had some villainous potion on it, so that's why it looks kind of purpley now. But I am going to go over with another layer of the chipped sapphire and just darken that color. One of my favorite colors of cardstock from Spellbinders Essentials is this teal topaz. It's such a beautiful color. I'm going to put a piece of that on my card base. The hexagon I popped up with some foam strips, and I'll center that on this panel. And then I'm going to add two frames around this. So this one I popped up with some foam strips. And then the second frame I'm going to glue down kind of askew over the first frame, just using little dabs of glue to do this. The hexagon dies from the set are really fabulous because you can use those just on their own. You don't have to foil anything with them, of course. And they're a great stash builder. So I'm adding even more to this card. You can just keep going sometimes, but I'm adding chipped sapphire just to the four corners. This just added a little more depth to the card and interest. I think I use my Distress Oxide inks more than any of the inks in my stash. For the sentiment, I'm pulling in a die set from last year called Simply Perfect Mix and Match Sentiments, and this one just says hugs. I'll glue down all of my foliage. I'm just gluing these down flat, making a little arrangement at the bottom of this hexagon. But I love the little pops of color of the foiled color. The hugs I cut out with black cardstock as well as silver and matted that with the silver. And here's a close-up look at the card. I also put a black licorice bow at the bottom of this. And then there are the extra bits that I added to the inside. I love it when I have leftovers or ephemera shapes that I can do that with. Well, I hope you found this video inspiring and fun. I sure had a lot of fun putting these cards together. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today, and I hope you have a chance to sit down and create some beautiful cards of your own. Take care, everyone. Bye.